Hello and welcome to another episode of Don't Shit on the Bus. This week we have the amazing Katy Cooper. Katy Cooper is a publicist for Big Picture Media. They are a New York / LA based publicist company that gets hired by labels, management, bands to be publicists. And this is our first guest we've had. I'm hoping we get managers and people like that in the future, but this is the first guest we've had that works mostly in an office. Of course, there are exceptions to this. There are people who travel with their artists. Maybe if you're to the size where you're playing arenas, you need a publicist on the road with you. But for the most part, these people are emailing all day. And then when you're in LA or New York, they'll come to the show that evening to, help you do your press or see your concert or just meet you and have some FaceTime. But overall, I felt like this was a master class in what it means to network, what it means to form a relationship with an artist and with other people in the industry and kind of navigate that so that you can help improve the press or the public view of an artist. And man, she is very good at this. It is, this job in general is a really good entry point to the industry. And I'm not saying it's an easy job. I'm just saying the skills associated with this job cross over to a lot of real world areas and in this world. So, if you're a social person, she'll tell you exactly what type of person it takes, but this might be a job for you to start on. Maybe you start as an intern or you work under somebody like Katy or something like that. And then you find your way into touring, or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you're touring and you're like, hey, this isn't for me. Let's try being a publicist. But it is something to do in the music world if you love music, if you love people, and you love working with people. That being said, if maybe you're already working in the music industry and you're like, well, why the heck should I listen to this podcast? I think a publicist is a good person to know because you need to understand what they're doing when they're at a show, what their goals are, and why they're there, because their job is very important. And as crew on tour, you don't get much time with the publicist. You probably see them a little bit backstage, say hey to them, and that's it. So now you'll know when you meet a band's publicist what exactly they do, who they are, and why they're there. And that should, in my opinion, allow you to do a better job at your job. And yeah, just the more you know, the better. Additionally, I know that it's always important to get more women on this podcast, so I'm excited to have her on. She touches a little bit about being a woman in the music industry, and those are just topics that I just can't relate to from personal experience. So the more we can get people on to talk about that, I know a good portion of our listeners are women. So I hope you can take that information and really use it. Katy, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. We appreciate you. And I hope everybody enjoys. But before we get there, just want to give a shout out to the new patrons this week. I will see you on the Discord. I don't always talk, but I always read. So I am a professional lurker when it comes to the Don't Shit on the Bus podcast. And man, we got some good people in there. But let's welcome Alan, Colby, Katrina, and Rebecca. Welcome to the Patreon. Thank you for your support by episode. We appreciate you. And of course, if you become a member of our group, you can always make suggestions. We're open to anything. We're just trying to learn, make this the best we can possibly make it for everybody involved. So join the Patreon, hop on the Discord. If you have any suggestions on how we can make this better, whether it involves us doing something differently, keeping to do something the same, or maybe you want to get involved in some way, just let us know. We are all ears. All right, with that being said, Katy Cooper and I will take this away, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Don't Shit on the Bus. All right, later. Well, welcome, Katy.
Thanks.
How's it going?
Thank you for having me.
Of course. It's been a while since we've spoken. We've never actually hung out, but we did do a sexism in the music industry talk when what was that on Hangouts? What's it called?
Clubhouse.
On Clubhouse way back when, and that was a great talk. Thanks for doing that.
Oh my gosh, of course. Thank you for having me.
It's nice to speak again, and I was thinking I feel silly that I didn't have you on here earlier because being a publicist in this industry is such an important job. And I feel like we should have covered it earlier because a lot of people are photographers or work with artists, and you connect everything.
But we're the connectors, we're the glue in it all. But we definitely are sometimes like the unspoken part of the industry. So it's okay. I still love you. I'm not upset. We're here now. And that's all that matters.
We are here now. But yeah, I guess today we'll talk about what it means to be a publicist, what your daily life is like, what your job is like. But before we do that, people need to know who we're talking to. I know a little bit about you, but it's so important to talk about, hey, how did this person get into the music industry? Because there's so many viable paths
Yeah.
and I like people to know all of them. So when did you get involved in the music industry?
I've always loved music. I grew up like playing classical flute. I grew up singing. I grew up dancing. So music was always very much like a part of me. In my mom's car, it was always Journey and Bon Jovi. My dad's car was a nice eclectic mix of like Green Day, Metallica, and Linda Ronstadt for like a nice kind of left of center one. So I always knew that I loved music, like bought Spice Girls on cassette. Went through 3 different CDs of Backstreet Boys Millennium because I wore them out so much that they stopped working.
That's one of my favorite records. I just want to say that was like 3rd grade for me. I think we're a similar age. That was like a 3rd, 4th grade for me. That I respect that.
That's when I found out that Santa Claus wasn't real. Spoiler alert, if anybody's watching this that doesn't know. But I had a Millennium CD in my stocking from Santa Claus, as well as in underneath my tree from my parents, as well as in my grandma's house at my Santa stocking. And I went, this is a little...
Santa's tripling up.
Santa really knew that I needed them, but it was great because I did need all of them. But fast forward many years, I went to school in San Diego for psychology because that was all I knew. Both my siblings have special needs, and I was like, this is what I know. Was a vocal performance major in college as well. Ended up working at Disney like seasonally when I was in school, and went there when I left school full time. And was at In-N-Out after work one day. And my best friend goes, you know what we should do? We should fly to Philadelphia to see the Wonder Years on their 10-year anniversary tour. And I said, okay, sure. One of our friends didn't buy his tickets on time. So we decided to DM Soupy on Absolute Punk. And we're like, hey, dude, see you're going to be in California. Can we potentially like buy a ticket off of you if we get you into Disneyland? And he's like, yeah, I'll list you guys. Like, no worries. So we signed in Soupy and the rest of the band to Disneyland. Their publicist at the time was with them, who is now my coworker, Natalie Schaefer. And she was like, hey, anytime you guys want to go to shows, let's do the thing. So fast forward a couple of years, I ended up in Florida working for Disney again at Disney World, and got connected to my now boss, Dana Travers, and signed in her and her family to Disney World. And we just instantly like hit it off. Connected on so many different levels, just like we were kindred spirits from the very beginning. And we kept hanging out anytime she was in Florida. And one time she was like, what are you doing with your life? We were like stuck inside during a torrential downpour, classic Central Florida energy. And I just looked and I go, I don't know, just like trying to figure it out, trying to go back to school, whatever. She said, you should move to New York and work for me. And I laughed it off. And I was like, yeah. She calls me a week later. I was like, hey, have you thought more about this? I really think that you're a publicist. You should move to New York. And I went, wait, what? Okay. She was like, yeah. A publicist, you just make people love what you love as much as you love it. And I go, oh, a professional hype girl. All right. Checks out. This seems right up my alley. I was like, well, my lease is up at the end of the month. She goes, all right, cool. Yeah. Oh, there's a full-time job offer for you if you want it. I was blown away, just baffled, had like a very large amount of imposter syndrome, but dove into it very much like head first. We worked on the U's 20th anniversary tour, Anthony Green's solo record, Aaron Gillespie's solo record, Sum 41's first record back, late night performance with that, coming up on like the 2-year anniversary of Emo Night LA. So it was like big stuff that was the core of everything who I was. I was just like, you mean I get to be on phone calls with Anthony Green? What? I get to sit at dinner with Derek Whibley? What? And I was in love, and I've been doing it now it was my 5-year anniversary on Sunday.
Happy late anniversary.
Thank you.
That's amazing. I think, well, there's a lot of favorite parts of that story, but I like that Dana, am I saying that correctly? Dana. Mm-hmm. I like that Dana identified that and you saw, that spark or that how much this meant to you and was like, come work for me. And then it takes the right type of person, you, to say, okay, I'm going to do it. Like that's great.
It was, the scariest thing I've ever done because I'd never been to New York. I had never taken a subway. I had never been there for more than, a couple of hours on like a random layover type situation. So there was a lot of fear of like, what is this industry? What am I doing? Am I going to be good at this? Do I like New York? What's snow? I had never seen snow fall from the sky. I didn't own a coat. Like I was very much just kind of like out of my element. But Dana very much was like, I can teach anyone to write a press release. I can teach anybody how to like use this software. I can, teach anybody how to do these things. But what you can't teach is that natural, just like connection, that energy, that desire to like be a people person, to be a
Hmm.
publicist, you have to be on 24/7. And that is something that you can't necessarily learn in school. Like, not to knock college, we love college, get your education. But sometimes there is like just that core of who you are and knowing the right people and surrounding yourself with people that just like trust you and love you and want to help you and push you. And I'm so thankful for like her and the rest of our team. I learned so much so quickly and happy to be where I am now.
Yeah, that's great. I like what you said, that there are some things that you can't teach. And I think that I think of that as like, you need to identify what you're good at and then work towards it. And for a
Hmm.
publicist, you mentioned, you're a professional hype person. If you were to explain a publicist to somebody else, maybe a little bit more in depth after a hype person, like what else is your job? Like, what do you do?
So, I mean, our goals at the end of the day are to make sure that everybody knows about our clients, whether that's, in the music industry, an artist. We work with people when they are getting ready to release singles, albums, going on tour, having really kind of any big newsworthy type thing. It can be anything ranging from music to like a large life event to a tour. Like I said, we do events as well, brands. So you name it, like people need PR. The way I explain it to like my grandparents is like anything when you're flipping through a newspaper or a magazine or scrolling through the internet and you see an article about something or someone, chances are publicists set that up. Any late night performances, a publicist has set that up. Anytime you see a photographer in a pit at a show, chances are that was set up by a publicist. So we are just making sure that people know everything that's going on for our artists. And on the flip side, we're our client's voice. We are the external version of them that faces the media. And a lot of it's proactive, being like, hey, my artist is doing this, this, this. Do you want to cover it? Do you want to talk about it? But then there's also the reactive side. If something happens, then it's like, okay, so this thing happens. Like, how do we either spin it back or how do we propel it forward? So it's a little bit of a double kind of brain type thing.
Wow, that is way more all encompassing than I realized. I've definitely been on the receiving end of, like press releases or things like that. But it's crazy that for each artist, you're basically shouting from the digital rooftop, being like, put this here, put that there, so that as the customer or the consumer, I'm just seeing this artist's name everywhere. Is that kind of the goal? Like you can't forget about them.
Exactly. That's like the number one thing is I want you all to know what is going on and why it's going on. And the way that I always try to look at it too is at the end of the day, like music specifically, it's subjective. People like what they like. They don't like what they don't like. There's not a ton that I can do to change people's ears and like their taste. But what I can do is also make people just like fall in love with artists because they're people. And I think that's something that I bring from like my psychology background and something that we do a lot of at Big Picture is like lifestyle press as well. It's not just about, hey, this song's coming out. Hey, this music's coming out. Hey, this tour's happening. But it's like, hey, this individual is also a person and they like this book and they're going to talk about it. Buddy Nielsen from Census Fail, we set him up with like a rock climbing magazine feature because he loves rock climbing. So just giving people opportunities to also talk about what makes them tick and humanize them so that it's not just this constant berating of like, all right, new song, new this, new that. It's like, hey, do you want to hear about Rob from Don Broco's favorite Slipknot albums? Because I do.
Yeah. Just finding different aspects that who knows how they can relate to this artist and putting that out there.
Yeah.
One of the things that I always saw, or how I know about Big Picture Media, is a lot of your artists seem so proud to work with you. And they say online, they'll be like, hey, I got here not because of me, but because of my team. And I think from maybe like the average concert goer, like somebody who's not involved in the industry, they just go to a concert and they see the show and they take it at face value. And they don't realize that there's a team behind everything. But as a publicist, how are you working with their team? Or like, who do you like? Could you kind of break down who you work with? I mean, are you talking to the artist directly? Are you working with their management? Or how does it work typically on the back end?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely varies like artist to artist. Some of our artists are like so indie DIY that the team is like just us and them. A lot of times we are hired out by labels or like management directly. So we'll usually be like daily emails with management and somebody from the label, usually on like the marketing team. And that's kind of our daily communication of just like, hey, what's going on? Here's what we have going. Can you help schedule it? Yada, yada. But I think for us specifically, we really do pride ourselves on our relationships with our artists. So there's not an artist that I'm currently working with that I don't have their cell phone number, that doesn't have my cell phone number, that I'm not talking to at least regularly. We always try to kick off, with like a nice Zoom or a phone call with everybody. Just be like, hello, I'm a person, you're a person. Like, here's who this is. Because I think that is something that we all see in this industry is everything is transactional and like email based and just very quick. And here it is. But in this, like with PR, you can't. Like I said earlier, we're their voice. If they don't know us, if I don't know them, then how do I do my job? So it's a little bit of a varied type thing. Some artists really want to be mega involved and are on every single email and are scheduling things themselves and are great about doing that. And other people like filtering things through management. So it really just depends client to client, but we definitely have at least some sort of tangible relationship with all of them, which is great.
So it's just whatever works. You're just doing whatever works best for them. It's not like you walk in, you're like, hey, this is how we work. So you need to do this thing. You're like, all right, what do you want? What works best for you? And we will mold and make that happen.
Yeah. Cause at the end of the day, that's what we have to do. If I'm just going to be here rigid and like, this is the only way, then I'm just going to be sitting here waiting for answers all day long.
Yeah. I feel like, I've met a lot of publicists after touring with artists, and I don't think it's my own fault, but I never really realized how important their job was. I just kind of took them for granted. And the more I understand what they do, I'm like, oh, this is so important to a musician's career.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but are some publicists, maybe not your company specifically, but some publicists are employed, like they'll work specifically for just a few artists and they have their own company, or some art publicists work for labels. There's different ways that people get their publicists, right?
Yeah. So some labels have like in-house publicists that are like their employees and they work on like that kind of label. For us specifically, we're technically like an indie PR firm. So labels will hire out and employ us, or artists will come to us or we'll go to them and on like a client by client basis. But everything works very differently. Like we have some labels that we do full retainers for like the label as a whole. We do individual clients. We do entire like companies and work every single event that they have. We did press for all of Warped Tour for the last 2 years of the full cross country tour. So that was a beast in and of itself, where we were doing press for Warped Tour, as well as for Kevin, as well as essentially for every artist on the tour. So every day is different, which is really nice.
Yeah. It sounds like you have a variety of everything. That takes the right type of person also, just to be able to be going with the flow and comfortable with everything. I know me personally, I do like repetition and routine. And sometimes if everything's changing every day, it's hard for me. So respect for you for, I don't know you very well, but I can see in your personality that you just make stuff work. And that's probably why Dana was like, hey, you need to be a publicist.
You have to be a doer. You have to be a problem solver, really good at time management, and really good at, going with the punches. I always say, when I was talking to people about going to Lala this weekend, they were like, what are you going to do there? I was like, well, here's what happens. Like you reach out to photographers and writers that are going to be there. You try to set up this entire really nice press schedule for your artist of like photo shoots and interviews. And then you walk through the gates and you throw it in the air. Because then everything changes, sets get delayed, people get stuck in lines, like this happens. And then
I gotta go to dinner right now. What do you mean? I can't do an interview.
Yeah, you're rolling around. You're like, where are you? What's going on? Somebody doesn't have their credentials. And you're back in that press room, just grabbing people, doing this, doing that, making it go. So you can go in with a set plan and then you just throw it away. But that's the best part.
Just cross your fingers.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Now it makes sense why, often I'm on the artist side just because I'll be working as a photographer for the artist. And it makes sense why the publicist comes to the dressing room and grabs the artist and like, okay, we're going to go do these things. Because it was up to an artist, like, even though they know it's best for them, sometimes they're just like, nah, I'll just sit here. They don't see the repercussions long-term. They just see the short-term advantage of being like, but I could eat food longer.
Yeah, but I could just hang. That's always a thing, like in New York or LA, when bands are in town and we have press days, managements or tour managers especially are just like, you now have them for today. Like we're going to go. And then we are the babysitter of the day. But yeah, that's the best part of the job is like the chaotic running around, grabbing, schedule, this, that. It's truly unlike anything else. It's a high.
Yes, I can see that. And especially coming from where you come from as being a fan and being involved in this world and then getting to kind of have your hands in it and affect it. It's hard not to be happy and motivated every day when you're living your dream to be like, I guess, I just feel off of it. It's like, no, you're going to talk to these people you look up to, you respect it. That's cool. I like that.
That's great.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So if anybody who's listening liked everything she just said, be a publicist. And if it
Yeah.
sounds crazy to you, don't be a publicist. Or maybe
That's
do. Or maybe do
or
be
maybe
it.
do. Maybe just try it.
Just try
Um,
it. Go crazy
yeah,
for
I
a
mean,
little bit.
I'm like very jealous and like envious of like some of our interns sometimes because they got to try so many different things and like go and like do a PR internship and do a management and do this and do that. And I'm now at the point where I'm like, what else is there? Like, how many different things can I like put my hands into? So I'm a big advocate for like interning, calling people, shooting your shot, setting up meetings with people, just like talking to people in the industry.
And we'll put Katie's contact or her socials in the caption of this. So if you want to reach out, don't be shy. Big Picture Media is the name of her company. We're not ending the podcast, even though it sounds like it, but hit her up. And this is usually what I do at the end, but I can't wait. I'm excited. Hit them up. Yeah, shoot your shot.
Through.
I think that's what we said before we hopped on podcast, but yeah, why not? They're good people.
Oh,
okay.
Thanks.
Well, before people, figure it out for themselves and intern, I was hoping you could kind of walk us through, and I know there's not an average, but I was hoping we could walk through like a daily office day.
Yeah.
And then I know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure a big part of your job is the stuff that you maybe don't get paid for. And that is like going to shows at night or going to other things. So I think we should add that at the end. But like you wake up in the morning, probably do your morning routine, and then you check your email. Where do you what do you have to do during the day?
Yeah. So I'm in that inbox all day long. I mean, every day can be, like I said, a little different, but the kind of general flow of things for me personally is like I wake up, log on, check anything that's come in overnight. And then depending on like if I have a release that day, it's like getting the press release sorted and loaded up into like our email marketing platform. Before that even happens, we're drafting the press release, we're sending it to management and labels for approval, we're getting all the assets that we need, sending it out to like trusted press under embargo via email to be like, hey, this artist is going to release this song tomorrow at this time. Here's all the assets.
What's trusted press embargo? You said some words there that I don't even know to say. Can you explain them?
Yeah. So a big, huge part of what publicists do and why we are paid and valued is because of our relationships with press.
Okay.
So we make friendships and professional working relationships with journalists, with photographers, with editors at major news publications, at the billboards, nylons, Rolling Stones of the world. And those are people that we have grown any form of relationship with over the number of years that we work with them. So you get to a point where you have these people that you trust, that trust you, that you can reach out to and say, hey, this artist is going to be doing this thing. Here are all of the assets. Don't post until this time. And you know that they aren't going to post it. They're not going to leak it. And they're going to post for you. And then you also obviously have like your goal people that you're like, hey, New York Times, do you want to do this thing?
What do you think?
Please. So that's a lot of like the day to day is just that active pitching. So sending out the press release to a bunch of people all at one time. And then those individual emails of like, hey, so-and-so, do you want to do this thing? Yes, please. Thank you. We're also monitoring all of the media that goes live. So searching through Google and socials multiple times a day to see anything that's gone up about our artists, sending over those links to our artists and their teams so that they can then share them on socials. When artists are on tour, it's coordinating all of those press requests that are coming in from photographers, writers that want to come out and review, putting those into a press schedule, sending those to tour managers, coordinating interview times. So it's a lot of just communication back and forth all day long. The fun part of all of it is just getting to then be able to like send those pitches and those like personal notes to people to be like, I personally love this song because of this. And I want you to too. Let me know what you think. And then getting those responses back from people that's like, oh my God, this is incredible. Yes. But then you also have a lot of, you're not getting anything back. Like we'll send 200-300 emails a day and you're just hoping for like 50 back.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of just like waiting. You do handle like a lot of rejection as a publicist, but sometimes the no is even better than the yes, where you're like, okay, thank you.
Thanks for the response.
I can now move on. Exactly.
I wrote down before you even said that. I was like, how good are you at being told no? Like, I bet you're just so used to it. You're just like, oh yeah, okay.
It's my favorite thing at this point. I'm like, thank you, please.
Communication is key here. I don't care what the answer is. Just the fact we communicated is all I want.
But then I also have to like be patient and understand too, I'm one publicist and I'm sending 200-300 emails a day. There are how many publicists in the
At
world
least
hitting these
3.
writers up? Yeah, at least a handful. So then I think about these journalists and these editors and photographers that are getting these emails in their inboxes. And I am just like, so there's a lot of like patience that you have to have and making sure that you're hitting the right people up and not bombarding them with unnecessary things. Like I'm not going to pitch somebody at Revolver like a pop track. That's silly and it's a waste of everybody's
Read the
time.
room. Come on.
Yeah. So that's a lot of the thing is like reading the room, knowing your audience, knowing media, knowing journalists, knowing what people are writing about. So what I usually try to do throughout the day too is spend, half an hour just like scrolling through Twitter, scrolling through publications, scrolling through different writers that I really like and saying like, okay, so what are they covering today? What are they talking about? What are they writing? That way I can make sure that I'm doing my homework and doing my due diligence to not send people things that's going to make them annoyed at me.
So there's almost a level of responsibility on your part where you need to be understanding the world of press, intaking it, analyzing it, whether that be, okay, this is what's written, this is what needs to be written, this is what's already been done. And then you have your output, which is like, okay, who am I going to email to? And it's kind of like strategizing in a way, I guess you'd say.
It is. There's a lot of strategizing that goes into it. And then just also like keeping in mind, especially over the last like year and a half, just keeping in mind the world and like being patient and meeting people where they're at and realizing that as much as like music is our lives and like what we love, there is also so much going on. And so many people have had to like change their beats, like what they write about because of everything that's been happening. So just being really mindful of that and treating people like people. Like journalists don't want to just be handed these, blanket cookie cutter emails of like, hi, so-and-so, yada, yada, yada. Just trying to make sure that you're asking people how they are and like actually responding to them. So that's a lot of the just kind of like inner workings and like humanizing of it that you have to understand. And then taking all of this that you've done all day back to the client and saying, so this is what I did. This is who we've heard back from. This is what's going on, and managing those expectations, whether they're exceeded, not met, whatever it is, and just being very, very transparent with them because they have to know what's going on too.
I feel like if somebody wanted to get into being a publicist, all they would have to do is be CC'd on every one of your emails you send for like a week, and they'd be like, all right, I understand a little bit of what this takes.
I'll host a little boot camp.
Yeah, let's go. Why is this email CC'd to 40 people? Don't worry about it. That's awesome. Well, I knew you guys sent a lot of emails. I know you said 200 to 300. Is that how many you send a day?
I'd say probably on average, that's like a pretty good bet, I think, in addition to like press releases, which go out to like 10,000 people at one time.
I think it's important for people to know how many emails people, like I know managers send a lot, publicists send a lot, the people who, tour managers send a lot, the people who are in an office or working with so many different people, because when you're writing an email to a publicist or a manager, you need to understand what their day looks like so you can respect their time. Like if you send a few paragraphs and you don't even know this person, it's probably not getting read because people like you they simply don't have the time.
Yeah. And on that note, I think especially just something for like photographers, writers to also like be really mindful of, especially now that touring is happening, is like, just give me the information that I need so then I can like take it and go run with it. So if you want to come cover a show, who are you? What show? Where?
When?
What outlet do you want to? The amount of emails that I get that goes, hey, I want to shoot this show. And that's the whole email. I just go,
I tried. There was an
an
attempt.
I just help me help you. So yeah, I think that is something to be mindful of too. It's just like, give the information that you need to give. And also if you're requesting something that's like 3 months away, maybe give me a couple of days to get back to you then, because it's going to be at the bottom of the old to-do list.
Yeah. So a few points to touch on there, especially the time frame one at the end. But it's interesting because for somebody who maybe isn't well versed in email writing, to hear, hey, be humanizing, but then also to hear, hey, give me your points, those things almost counteract each other. So you have to there's a certain amount. I would say like maybe 3 sentences is a good length of an email. What do you think? Like if somebody's requesting something, how fast do you think they should be able to say, hey, how are you? Humanize themselves, not be a dick, basically, and then request it. Is 3 emails or 3 sentences a good length? Yeah,
I mean, I think just a simple like, hey, if I don't know you, like tell me who you are. Just be like, I'm so and so. I write or shoot for this outlet. I live in this place. Super excited about this artist. If I know you, just be like, hey, dude, how are you? I pet a dog today.
What up?
Cool. And then just like quick bullet points at that point is like the city, the venue, the artist, what you need. Do you need a photo pass? Do you need a ticket? Who are you shooting for? A link to like what you have done before. All of that stuff is great to have. I will read anybody talking about like their dog all day long. If you want to like talk about like your cute grandma, I'm here for it. But just some of like the unnecessary fluff, like,
Hey, I've been doing this for this long. I
yeah,
started
I
in this
don't,
like life story. Like it's kind of irrelevant to the goal here.
yeah, I don't need that. Just give me the hits,
And I think the best way to think of it, if maybe you're like, of course, if you're trying to write these and you're struggling, come hit us up. We'll help you. But the best way to think of it is after I send this email to Katy, does she know everything she needs to know, or does she need to email me back to ask questions? Because if she needs to email me back to ask questions, I didn't do a good job writing the initial email. At least, I don't know. Can you agree with, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And on the flip side, that's what I try to do with my emails too. Like when I'm
Okay.
sending stuff out to journalists, I want to make sure that I have everything they need. I don't want them to have to ask me for anything because that's going to delay it. I just want to say, hey, here's the press photo, here's the bio, here are the lyrics, here's the press release, here's everything that you could possibly need. So there's no reason to say no, right?
Yeah, I did all the hard work. All you have to do is click a few times. You're good.
Yeah.
For time frames, like I am aware that it is an effect that I am a photographer. So a lot of people that listen to this are photographers. And while we are not just about photography or videography, a big part of your job is interacting with press. So interacting with writers, photographers, videographers. With that being said, first, time frame wise, you mentioned like if you hit me up 3 months ahead of time, it goes to the bottom of my list. How far ahead of time should somebody be reaching out to you if they want to do some sort of press for you at a concert that's coming up?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say if you want to do like a preview interview with an artist, hitting me up maybe like 6 weeks ahead of time is good, depending on like your deadline for your outlet. If you're wanting to come out and shoot or write a review, if you are in what we'll call like, a mid-level market, if you are somewhere in like the Midwest, or essentially if you're not in like LA, New York, Chicago, Miami, 2 weeks ahead of the show, totally fine. I'd say if you're like a New York, LA, Chicago, any of those like gonna sell out really major market cities, 3 weeks is good. Because then at least like we can get it slated. We usually won't be able to make decisions, especially for those markets, until much closer to the date. But then at least that's what I can take back if we have to do like a ticket buy through the label, or if we have to request more press tickets. And then just also being mindful and understanding that we only have a certain amount of tickets that are like allocated for press on each date. And as I'm sure you know, being on tour, you get to these major cities and bands have friends, and you have label, and you have managers, and you have this. And people will say, hey, sorry, day of, we can't give you any press tickets actually. Joe's mom's coming out and their entire high school class is also coming. And so sorry. So just being mindful that those things do happen, and it's not personal. I don't have the tickets.
And can we talk a little bit about, because I know it's definitely, and even for me, it was a little bit foreign, but it's very normal for you to say like, hey, we don't have tickets and there's ticket buys, but that might be really foreign to somebody who's never done this before. Can you explain that concept real fast of how you allocate tickets and how you choose press and what that system looks like so that people understand it?
So just like, you buy a ticket to a concert, there are a certain amount of tickets that a general consumer can buy because venues, wherever concerts are held, have a capacity that is set by the fire marshal or the larger powers that be. So with that then being said, when artists go on tour, they are told, hey, you have X amount of tickets that are free that you get per city, and you can allocate those however you want, whether that's for your own personal friends and guests, whether you want to do giveaways, whether they're for press, whatever it is. And so then we are told that number, usually ahead of a tour kicking off. So then we know, okay, so in each date, I'm probably going to have 5 tickets that I can give out to writers or photographers free of charge, complimentary, for them to then come, be able to review the show, shoot, leave, and give me some sort of press coverage in return. We then have to, if we only have 5 spots and 27 people have applied, we then have to go through and say, okay, so where can we go? Who's going to make the most kind of bang for our buck at this point, of like what outlet is going to be the most impressive for our client? Where is maybe an outlet they haven't been covered before? Where maybe is like a stronger writer? Where is maybe a stronger photographer? and then trying to work with people and to say, hey, okay, so you came and you wanted to request a +1. I can't give you a +1, but I can give you 1 ticket if you can come. Or if you're a photographer and you're not reviewing the show, okay, hey, if there's still tickets available, if you can purchase a ticket, I can give you a photo pass. And trying to find those ways to then like finagle it and work it so that we can get as many people in as we can, but also knowing that there's a limit in those kind of like more major markets. Or if it is like a list that I really am like, I can't turn this down. Like we need all 10 of these people. They're like great press that we need. Then I go back to the managers or labels or the venue and like bat my eyelashes and say, hey, are there any more tickets that we can pull from anywhere else? So maybe somebody isn't using their full list. Maybe somebody has extras. Maybe it's not sold out. And we can do some sort of like a discounted ticket buy through the label or whatever it is. And so we'll try to do our best to like pull tickets wherever we can. But especially those like sold out big ones, it's tough.
Yeah. So for people who are trying to be press, just note that it's a lot easier to, because of this, get press passes to smaller markets sometimes because there's not as high of a competition. So I know it can feel discouraging living in, Kansas City or somewhere where a lot of major tours go through, or there's not a lot of photographers, but you can kind of use that to your advantage, I feel like.
Oh, 100%. And I think especially in a place like California, like, okay, so if you're not going to get approved for LA, but they're playing Santa Ana, that's a 40-minute drive.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Observatory, you got an In-N-Out and a Sonic right there, like bingo bango. And that'll probably be a little easier one to do.
Yeah, that was a lot of good information. I'm still digesting it because like I know a lot of things, but sometimes you're like filling in all these. It just helps so much coming from, I can speak from a photographer's point of view or just anybody knowing what's going on the other side. Why am I getting angry when I'm getting told no? Or why am I getting told no? It helps maybe people get less angry or know that it's not just like, we don't like you. It's hey, there's reasons behind these things.
Yeah, we're all just humans. If I could approve every single person for everything, yeah. Happily.
The photo pit would look like Warped Tour.
Yeah, that's the other thing is like you want to be respectful and make sure that, the photographers in the pit have the opportunity to get their shots that they need. I could shove 50 people in there, but then y'all are going to be stuck sardined and somebody's face is going to be in your camera at all times.
Yeah. It gets wild down there sometimes.
It's crazy. It's a war zone.
Agreed. Especially if you're at a Guar show. Then it's really gore. That's bloody.
It's kooky.
So other than working in the office or whatever you want, I know we say working in the office, but I'm sure you take your computer to coffee shops. I'm sure you work at home or wherever you want to work. It's the plus side of being mobile. There's another side of your job that is what we talked about a little bit. Your job is to have relationships. It's to be humanizing. It's to connect with the people you work with so that you can best represent them, best work with them, and, mold the way you work to how they operate. So, I see it a lot at shows, at concerts, and correct me if I'm wrong, but usually publicists aren't paid for the concerts they go to, right? It's just kind of something you have to do for your job.
Yeah, it's part of the job. It's funny because you can obviously see people that like get jaded in the industry and you see the people just like standing there with their arms crossed. But at the end of the day, like we're just seeing live music and like, that's my job.
Let's go.
Don't get me wrong. It's tiring. And like after working 9-10 hours in the office, then going to a show that's 5 bands long, like, yeah, I get it. You're tired. But that is like a huge part, whether that's going and just supporting our artists and like getting FaceTime with them and being able to like say hi and talk to them and ask how tour is going and whatever it is. But then also going to shows with writers, with photographers, hanging out with them, hanging out before or after, being like, hey, do you want to get dinner? Do you want to get a drink? Because again, so much of this is transactional and it can feel so much like I'm just asking for things. I'm asking for things. I'm asking for things. But then to be able to sit down and just like bro down and be like, hi, who are you? How are you? What are you doing? Let's grab a beer. Let's talk. And you can start to build those friendships and those like true relationships. So those are the people then you can like call in a pinch too. And the more that you know these journalists and these photographers and these like people inside out and backwards and what they love and what makes them tick, it also makes you be able to do your job better because you know what they genuinely love. You know who they are. You know what's going on in their lives. You can really balance things out accordingly.
Yeah, it's like you've got the teamwork aspect down on a whole other level.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me though, I know it's a little bit more specific, but you're going to a show tonight. Like you're the publicist for an artist that's in town. So obviously you're probably not paying, you're getting a pass and you're going into the show. what next? Like, do you go and hang out with the band backstage, or like, what do you do at a show as a publicist?
Yeah, so every day can be a little different. I feel like I keep saying that, but it's so true.
I mean, yeah,
So
it's hard to be like, what happens in this situation? We're like,
every
well, if
time.
this, and this, then yeah, there's too many variables.
Yeah. So if we have press, like, and if we're doing interviews on site,
Hmm.
like at this show specifically, then we'll be there to help coordinate that, get the journalists to go backstage, meet with the band, do the interview, get all the work kind of stuff done. If it's just like a normal show where we're just kind of hanging, normally what I'll do is, yeah, I'll get my ticket, I'll go inside, usually touch base with the tour manager and just say, hey, I'm here. Would love to say hi to the band or the artist whenever they have a second. Just trying to be mindful that that backstage room is their home. I don't want to linger there unnecessarily. I don't want to be there when they're trying to like zone out before a show, when they're trying to warm up, when they're trying to do what they want to do. So just like knowing your place and your time, and trying to be respectful of that at all times. So at some point, go back there, say hi, hang out for a little bit, wish them luck, go up, see the show, usually try to like stand with either colleagues or, if anybody else from the industry is there, do a little bit of schmoozing, a little mingling, and then just like have a good time. My favorite thing is after show when I go backstage and see my artist and they go, I saw you jumping up and down, or I could hear you yelling.
Yes.
I saw you in the pit. Was that you crowd surfing? And I go, yes, it was.
Yes, I love your band. That's why I'm here.
Exactly. That's my favorite thing, is when they can then see it and they just go, oh, you're not full of shit. Okay, yeah, you really do love this. And I go, yeah, you're right. I do. Here we are. And then, yeah, just like a quick little hang, depending on where you are and like what the rest of their routing looks like. Maybe they have like a really early bus call and you're like, okay, I'm out of here. Maybe they have an off day the next day and like we're all going to go out and have a couple beers. But just always trying to make sure that, you're just being respectful. Again, I like can't express that enough, of like your time, your place. I'm there to work. As much as I'm there having fun, I'm there in a role, in a professional role, in a professional setting, and always want to make sure that there's like that level of respect on both sides.
Oh, that's great. And I'm sure going into this, it was maybe easier for you to navigate because of your background with school and just who you are. But I was wondering if when you started going to concerts and going backstage, there was obviously a learning curve of when, where, what do I do at what time? You had to learn like, hey, they got an early bus call tomorrow. I got to leave earlier. Do you have any like embarrassing stories along the way that where you did the wrong thing and you're like, I don't know, anything funny that you kind of stumbled across going to concerts for the first few times?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely those moments where you're just like, you're so excited, just to like be in that energy. And it is cool. Like you're backstage at a rock show, like your favorite bands, but then you start seeing like people are leaving and like you're still there just like chatting and hanging out. And then all of a sudden you look up and you're like, oh, I'm the last person here. It's just me and the band. And you're like, where did everybody go? Why am I still here? It's 1 a.m. I gotta go. And I definitely had a few of those moments and just those learning curves of just remembering like you shouldn't be the last person in the room. Like you don't want to ever like be feeling like you are intruding on people's like time and space. And I mean, thankfully, this because I feel like we work with so many of the same people. Like everybody's just like so down to clown, so chill, so happy to hang. And most people are so hospitable. So sometimes it can be hard to like read those like signs and signals. And it definitely is like a learning curve. And I think that there is also this extra level of just having to be mindful of who you are and where you are as a woman in this industry. I wish it wasn't the case, but especially in like the rock alternative scene, there are a lot of my artists are men in bands, and I'm surrounded by like men teams, and I might be the only like woman backstage. And so just trying to be mindful of like optics and what things can appear to be, and never wanting to like be like the drunk girl backstage or the last one hanging out with like a band, and leaving any sort of like weird image or thought in anybody's mind. And I think that was a very big thing for me to learn, because I'm so social. I just like love hanging out with everybody. I have zero interest in ever kissing a band boy. It sounds like a true nightmare.
I like that line. I never want to kiss a band boy.
No, I don't want to do it. Sounds like a nightmare. But there is, unfortunately, this, just kind of stigma that we have to continue to break through, where it's like, no, I can be backstage and have a fun time. I'm here to do my job. I'm not here to hook up with anybody. I just want to hang out with the rest of the guys. But that's not always the case. And I think that that's a huge thing that I had to learn to be mindful of too, is just realizing that not everybody knows me. Not everybody
Yeah.
knows my intentions. Not everybody knows who I am or why I'm there. They just see a girl backstage.
And are there steps, like a lot of the communication, and I've talked about this before on the podcast, that happens backstage is nonverbal, right? You don't get the chance to go up to everybody and be like, hey, I'm Katy. I'm excited. Like, this is who I am. A lot of people talk with you without talking with you, and they only see you. They see how you act. So are there steps that you have to take, whether I agree with it or not? You know, like, this is the reality we live in currently. Are there steps you have to take from the moment you start getting dressed from a show that are intentional to, you know, how you stand, to how much you drink? Like, can you walk through some of those things that maybe are specific to being a woman, but also some of them might just be specific to doing this in general, like drinking or, you know, just social things?
Yeah. I mean, I think when thinking about getting dressed, you're like, I'm going to a show, it's going to be hot, it's going to be sweaty, but I want to make sure that like I'm not wearing anything too revealing or like to this or to that. You want to make sure that you're still like professional and you look nice, but you can still like be sweaty and have fun. As far as like drinking and being backstage, I think it's a lot of that is like reading the room. I'd say the first like handful of shows that I went to, I was like, I'm not even going to drink a beer, like a Coors Light. Absolutely not. Because I was so worried that people were going to see a girl backstage and be like, she's drunk, she's that. And I think you learn as you go, much like you do in any sort of other like social setting. Like you learn your limits, you learn to see like what other people are doing. I'm a very big people watcher. So being like, okay, this person's doing that. These people are drinking this much. These people are eating. These people are touching this. Like, and just trying to be very mindful and following the leader in a sense. We're all very good about like, we roll to shows in squads at Big Picture. Like there will always be like 3-4 of us. So for that, it was really nice that I had these women. We're also a team of all female publicists right now. I was
going to say, you guys are all women, which is cool.
Yeah. So that was really nice where I had, you know, these people that I looked up to, like my mentors, that I was able to say, okay, like they're doing this, they're doing that. This is at least a good way that I can follow. But then also being cognizant and saying, hey, but these people have 3, 4, 5 years of experience with these people. And I am new to all of this.
You're making first impressions.
Yeah.
You know?
And first impressions are really everything. And I think it starts from the moment you enter the door, the way that you interact with people at the box office, because you're going to see them a lot. You are going to be friends with the people at the box office because you're going to shows 3, 4, 5 times a week. To the way that you interact with security when you're walking backstage, saying, hey, I'm Katy, I'm the band's publicist. I'm going to be coming back a few times because of interviews and this, that, the other. You know, making sure that you want to be best friends with the tour manager. They are your saving grace on tour. You want them to love you inside out and backwards. And so just continuing that relationship with the people that you know are going to be in charge, but also just there every step of the way for you, so that you start building those kind of things. And people know now when they see me walk in, they're like, oh, this is Katy. She is very much like, 1, supposed to be here. 2, is never going to be disrespectful. Will leave when she needs to leave, before she needs to leave, and is going to make sure that anybody that's around her is also like being respectful and responsible. I think that's a huge thing too. Like, I love bringing friends to shows, but you also have to make sure like, hey, is this somebody that I'm willing to put my name on? Is this somebody that's going to be able to like be okay?
Oh man, nightmare situations happen in those scenarios. That's like the worst. When you bring somebody to a show and they're like, spring break, or they're like, and you're like, dude, you have to leave. You're going to ruin my career. Like, you have to go.
I'm very thankful I have not had that option. Thing happen to me. I have one of my like best guy friends in New York was always like my +1, because he loves every band that I work with, but he also is like so independent, so cool, so unfazed by everything. And he's like, hey, go do what you need to do. Mix, mingle, schmooze. I'm going to be in the pit. I'll see you after. And I go, cool, great, awesome.
Hey, well done. And you have good friends. I'm not saying they're bad if they would do that, you know?
I really do.
Well done. I think that's pretty much the majority of what I wanted to ask you. I kind of just wanted to understand what you do, how you do it, where you do it, and give a taste of like what people might experience if this is something we want to do, because you know it's hard to get on tour with an artist. It's hard to have that be your first job in the music industry, and I think a publicist is a good way to learn just how to exist. I mean, almost all your job is just, hey, Don't be a dick. Don't shit on the bus and hang out.
Yeah, exactly. Don't do that. And I think for us too, it's like if the amount of times that a tour manager, a band, or somebody has like reached out to me and said, hey, we're looking for somebody to come sell merch. We're looking for a photographer on tour. We're doing this. Like people trust us and like our
Your
judgment.
judgment.
And yeah, because they know that we know everything that goes into everything. So I'd say like if you are trying to get on tour, like become very good friends with a publicist.
Yes.
They will help you out. I love nothing more than being able to like share work for my friends. Like I'm so lucky that some of my best friends are creatives. And being able to say like, oh yeah, I know this person. Like I know this. The amount of times that I've been able to be like, oh yeah, you need a great like video team that can work remote and be awesome. Like first three, what's up?
Thank you. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Cool. We have some questions from our patrons, just 2. And, we honestly kind of answered them, but I think that there's a little bit, we could specifically answer these and add a little bit more to it. So one of them comes from Adam, and he was wondering if, it's not me, by the way, it's a different Adam. Does the size of the publication play a major role in whether or not they get granted a press pass? Yeah, approved for a press pass.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. There is something to be said about like numbers and stats. And I think that those types of things are much more easily digestible to managers and artists specifically, especially if it's like a notable press outlet. But something we really try to be mindful of too is like the who. I would much, much rather approve somebody who I know is going to write a beautiful, beautiful review and have really strong pull quotes, or a photographer that's going to be able to shoot incredible, gorgeous shots than maybe something that's going to be like 2 lines in a major publication. But you also have to weigh those things where it's like, is this publication going to be the first time an artist is in there? Is this our kind of first shot in? Is this our step in the door?
New grounds, new territory?
Yeah. So it is very much trying to be mindful of that. But then also remembering that these people at these like small, quote unquote, outlets one day will be at those bigger outlets, and making friends with those people when they're starting out and giving them their press passes and doing these things. I mean, I look at like a Catherine Powell or like Ashley Osborne, like Dana has worked with them for the last decade, and gave them some of their first press passes. And like looking at them now, like I'm so lucky to like have those women like as my friends and like in my back pocket and people that I love. And it's the same thing that you can say for like journalists and major outlets too.
Yeah. So it's just about forming those relationships. And sometimes there's more factors that come into play than how many followers do you have or something. So it can't hurt to try, but also be aware that, it is a contributing factor. All right. The other question is from Eraberto, which I'm probably saying wrong, but are there any annoying things that people / photographers can avoid when reaching out for covering artists? Is there anything like big no-nos? I know we touched on the email length, but other than that, what are some things people might do?
I think just like being able to accept a no is a huge thing. The back end, like if I can't accommodate it, I'm very sorry. It's out of my control a lot of times. Like I was saying earlier, we have a limited space, we have a limited thing, and just accepting no for an answer and saying like, okay, thanks. Like if anything changes, let me know. I'm so much more apt to then keep those people in mind if somebody cancels than somebody who's like, what do you mean? I want to do this, the other. It's okay. I get it, but I now don't have the energy to fight with you, nor do I now want to help you again, because you're kind of being a jerk to me.
And it kind of goes back to like what you were saying when you reach out to publications and they tell you no, like take a second to realize that, Katy or the publicist is responding to you, and your goal here should be interaction and communication and forming a relationship, not to get the pass. So take advantage of that no.
Yeah.
If you can. Thank you for your time. Like, what's a good response? Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Let me know if you have everything in the future. I'm in this. Like, what's a good response to a no?
I think something just very simple along the lines of like, thanks so much. If anything changes, let me know. I live in this area and have a pretty open schedule. So if any other tours come through, I'm down to shoot whatever. I'm down to review whatever. Like those are the people then that when I have maybe a smaller artist that's coming through, I'll be like, hey, I remember I couldn't accommodate you for this, but we have this artist, like would love for you to come out. And that's, again, how we start building those relationships. And also just don't get discouraged if it can't happen this time. It will. It eventually will happen, as long as you just like keep being nice and keep being great.
Yes. Good advice. Keep being nice, keep being great. That's a better way of saying don't be a dick than I'm like, don't be a dick. You're like, be nice and great. I'm like, maybe I should opt more on the like, do this, not don't do that.
We're good balance here.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was great. I appreciate you coming
on. Thank you for having me. I'm stoked, guys. This is my first podcast.
Actually, wait, I have one last question. Have you toured?
I have not. So it is something that I've always wanted to do. Publicists don't necessarily go on tour until you are at the size of like maybe like Justin Bieber. Like you got to be like real big to need somebody all day, every day. And then those people are like Taylor Swift's publicist.
Oh yeah, they probably work like crazy.
My icon.
Well, my question was a lead up to another question. If you were to tour, would you wear shower shoes? Do you know what shower shoes are?
Yes.
They're like flip-flops you wear in the shower. Would you or would you not? What do you think, theoretically, in theory?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that I would because public showers really gross me out. I also just like, I'm not a huge like fan of feet. Feet in general.
You just don't want to look at your own feet.
Yeah, it's not, it's just like, it's gross. But then I also think like, okay, is it 2 a.m. and I'm like pretty tired, maybe like a couple drinks in, and I just need to shower quickly. Am I going to grab shoes?
Probably
not. I think in practice, like in theory, I would love to. But I would love to tour. I've always said I'd love to go out for maybe like a week or 2.
Just try it
and
out.
That's it. Just do it very quickly. Maybe like a nice little California route. So if any of my artists just want to hang out for like a week.
Any bands, artists listening to this, you've got a publicist that'll come hang. She can get tons of photographers there. Like,
yeah,
good vibes.
I'd love to. Yeah, I'm like a good vibe. I love being able to just anytime that like we've had artists have had full kind of days where I just get to like sit on the bus and play some video games all day. So fun.
Yeah, let's go. That's tour life.
And I can sleep anywhere.
That is true. Anywhere that, preferably probably on the bus so you can get to the next tour date. But anywhere on the bus.
Put me in like in the back lounge. Put me in like the front little couch area.
You'll sit on the jump seat next to the driver.
I will.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So I'm gonna manifest that. Maybe not this year, but maybe next year I'll go out for like a week or 2.
Well, there's some touring people that listen to this. I know Casey. Casey, take her on tour. Well, if you're still listening to this podcast, it means you've now listened past the outro song and you've gotten to the part where Connor and I just talk. What are we going to talk about today?
Dude, you're moving up to LA now. That's news.
That is cool. We're back to LA. We took a break for a month, back up there, or a break for a year rather. COVID happened, so we escaped for a little bit.
Time's relative. It all felt like one long Monday.
Well, every week I'm like, what can Connor and I talk about that we've been working together for a year? I think we talked about that last week, but there's a lot of things that we learned together because we talk weekly. And one of the things I thought that was really interesting about your path is you learning to write emails and talk with people. How's that been for you?
It's been a struggle, dude. Like you see me from where I started, though, a lot better, like great chart graphs going up, but I feel like it's the hardest thing I've had to learn so far for this podcast. Like, not even kidding.
It's not even just for the podcast. You had to learn it for the music industry. I'm sure you can tell other people how important and difficult that aspect of it might be, and maybe give them some tips. Like somebody's at home and they're starting to write emails to try to get internships or work with people. We've talked about it on the podcast, but what are some things that you found interesting while you were learning about that process?
For sure. You keep it short. That's probably the biggest thing I've learned from you is always keep these short and keep it professional, but loose, which I'm still trying to learn. I think you found that out too.
Professional, but loose.
Yeah. It's like a jungle gym. Got to play around with it, try to figure it out still.
I like that. A jungle gym.
Yeah.
All right. So at the beginning, you're probably like, all right, I'm going to email this person or maybe even recently, right? You're reaching out to guests for the podcast. What are the things you thought you should say and what actually should you say, and what's the difference between them? Maybe you can even just start by how you greet them or how you say goodbye to them or how you ask them questions, like any of those things, and what about your perspective changed?
I thought of a great example for that was I didn't realize we were asking them questions, not the other way around. When I was writing a recent email to somebody, that
What do you mean?
And just
Oh, yeah.
answering, and reading their email and answering like one by one, like they asked for this, this, and this. Just answer that way. Don't overcomplicate it. Just
yes, there's a system to it, right? So you read an email, and I think to translate what Connor is saying, he's saying that he misinterpreted what somebody was asking him. And, there's a system and a response and order to every email. If somebody says, hey, how are you doing? Can we hang out on Monday? Also, how's the weather? You say, yeah, I'm doing great. Yes, I can hang out on Monday. Also, the weather is awesome. You don't start with the weather and then, you answer it systematically so that it makes sense. So you don't have to number everything. You can when it gets pretty confusing, but you respond in a way that makes sense and try to keep it organized.
Can I mention one more thing?
You can mention 10 more things.
Oh, hyperlinking. You won't
that?
find this on the
What's
internet.
that?
Hyperlinking, just between, I want to go to, let's say I was sending someone our podcast URL for the website. That'd be a different way of hyperlinking that, which is, attaching a link to, so you can just click on it, boom, you go right to the website. That, or, we have clips that we send out to our guests. That would be hyperlinked differently as well. So they don't need to put in more effort to get the clips. They just get it. And that was such a big thing for me to learn, because you don't really find that on the internet. You just have to be taught that or learn it.
Yeah. So what Connor's referring to, and I understood it, but I know more than what other people might know. So I'm going to break it down a little bit, if that's okay.
Please.
Okay. So there's two different ways to link something, and this is super nitpicky, but it's important. Let's say I'm sending Connor an email and I'm like, hey, check out my new podcast, and I want to link to it. And then I say, you can, view some recent clips here. Now, for checking out your new podcast, that's a link you'd probably spell out. You wouldn't just link the word podcast. You'd write www.don'tshitonthebus.com, because that URL is just as important as where it's going. It's important they know the URL. But when you say check out some clips or whatever I said the second part of that was, and you link maybe a Dropbox with those clips, they don't need to know that it's dropbox.com/LMNOP, 777. They just need to have that link, because they're not going to memorize it. So it's important to remember when to link something by embedding the link over the word of what it is, or when to link it with its actual URL, because there's a difference and there's utility to it. And I don't know if I used the word utility right there, but there's a reason behind it, and it makes sense. So it just came out of me. I don't know why I did that. Sometimes I'll use words incorrectly and I'm like, Adam, you don't sound smarter. You just sound confused.
I use words wrong 99% of the time, but it works
words
out.
Mean things. That's the conclusion of the email conversation. Words mean things.
This is true. They do. Each and every one of them.
Yes. So be intentional, keep it short, and make sure everything you type is there for a reason when you're contacting somebody in all regards, because you don't want to waste their time. You don't want to waste your time. You don't want it to be confusing.
And don't shit on the emails.
Don't shit on the emails. All right, cool. All right, cool.